0317 hours. A passive seabed array hears a whisper 140 nautical miles out. Then the line hardens. Probable SSN, southbound through the GIUK gap. You click for the showdown. You're in the right place. Here's the OODA loop. We'll track how a Yazan M-class slips to within 22 to 28 miles of a NATO carrier group for 11 hours, triggers one 8-second cavitation, fires off a single clean ping, and forces a layered response. P-8 sonobuoy fields every 40 minutes, destroyer pouncer stations, a Virginia-class in the shadows. Watch how information, not torpedoes, decides the fight. Before we move on, I'd like to ask you a small favor. If you appreciate this content, please take a second to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Over 98% of you watch the videos without subscribing. It costs you nothing, but it makes a huge difference to us. So, did you click the subscribe button? Great. Thank you so much. Now, back to the video. A faint blade rate line at 50 to 60 Hz. One smear on a passive array, and a carrier group shifts stance. Why? Because that smear isn't noise, it's intent masked by ocean math. At 0317, a seabed hydrophone takes the first bite. A distant contact roughly 140 nautical miles out, weak but steady, moving south toward the GIUK seam. The label goes on, probable SSN. Not a surface drifter, not a storm echo, a submerged engine turning at a rate that says modern, disciplined, and quiet. But the line rides the noise floor. Sea state is up, so waves slap and microbubbles blur edges you want clean. The merchant lanes hum, fishing rigs drag cables, and ice melt sends odd little pops. Is it clutter, a slow freighter, or a Yazan M threading the corridor with care? That's the call that moves gas, metal, and people. You hear GIUK and think map points. It's more like a funnel with teeth. Greenland, Iceland, and the UK shape a set of shelves and sills that squeeze water and sound, with steep rises, cold tongues of water, and warm surface caps that bend sonar paths the way heat shimmers bend light on a road. Those bends stack in separate layers, so a small acoustic tell can jump between decks like a whisper in a stairwell. So the geometry tightens. The inner screen draws in, trading spacing for overlap. The outer ring shifts lanes, opening a quiet pocket here, closing a gap there, to corral likely approach vectors without announcing it. A Virginia-class trails not behind the carrier, but offset in depth, a mirror made of silence. If the contact dives, the shadow dives. If it climbs to sample layer changes, the shadow rides that edge too. Meanwhile, the air net goes to work. P-8A Poseidons lays sonobuoy patterns on a clock, about every 40 minutes, not as a carpet but as linked lamps. One buoy can push sound, another can only listen, and when those beams cross, you get shape where there was just hush, flashlights and fog, but smarter and with timing that wipes out guesswork. Fields age, so you roll them. Holes shrink. Doctrine splits the room. The Russian play loves to close and shadow, put steel within steel, hug the battleship logic of presence. NATO leans on information dominance. See first, build certainty, starve options, don't poke when you can pin. You feel it in the tone on the net. Few words, tighter loops, patience as pressure. Inside the ops center, the fight is a line that wobbles, then firms. Analysts watch the blade rate drift a hair, then settle into a persistent low beat that holds even as sea state shifts. A merchant's heart isn't that steady this far north, not on that heading. The board moves from probable to confirmed. Not a flag wave, a checkbox, then a call. Tighten pouncer stations along the projected track. Don't spook. Reduce sanctuary ahead. Here's the trigger that raised posture. That low, fixed blade rate never goes away, even when the ocean tries to smear it. It keeps threading south along the GIUK channel, not meandering, not loitering. That pairing, modern SSN tone, plus corridor discipline, lights the ODA loop. Observe tightens. Orient finalizes. Decide. Now the pieces lock in. The watch gives the clock a name, 11 hours. No shots, no flares. Just a cat and mouse run in cold water where one mistake gets loud, and loud hands the board to the other side. The steel serpent wants a look. The net wants a line. And both think they can get it without breaking the surface. 8 seconds of cavitation. One clean ping. 2 tiny noises that tilt a billion-dollar chessboard. What would you do with that? The Yazanim holds just outside the outer ring, riding 22 to 28 nautical miles off, nose quartered toward the wake where the carriers churn dull's ears. Speed band for speed band. It tucks into the group's acoustic shadow, letting the big ship's low rumble and the escort's blade wash smear its own line. The goal isn't glory. It's geometry. Stay near the lane without crossing a threshold that forces a hard reply. But then the clock starts to grind. Each buoy field ages. Batteries drop, sea state shifts, thermoclines slide, and coverage gets holes that weren't there 40 minutes ago. Poseidons cycle fresh grids on schedule and on task, flying wide arcs to keep the net stitched tight. A Virginia-class drags its ghost behind the plot, quiet, offset in depth, never crossing the line of steel in front. Destroyers hold fire discipline. Crews want to push active and burn the fog. Command says no. Any surge turns posture into provocation. At exactly the wrong moment for the intruder, a propulsor hiccups. Not a failure. A twitch. 8 seconds where the 50 to 60 Hz blade rate lifts, spikes, then falls back to normal. On the scope, it's a thin white scar. On the floor, it's chairs scraping and heads turning. Analysts pin it as a micromaneuver, an attempt to yaw or step speed to snap a bearing fix on the carrier's lane, like a photographer tapping the shutter and hoping no one heard. That little jump gives heading, rate, and a narrower cone of probability. The grid tightens half a click without a word said. Snapping a picture undersea means you trade silence for a sliver of truth. A submarine shifts speed or angle to feel how returns change, to sort ships by their pulse, to nail which wake is the flagship's and which is an escort's decoy. Do it clean, and you vanish back into the noise. Miss by a breath, and your mask slips. Today, the mask slid just enough to be seen. Minutes later, the water answers. One active burst. Short, crisp, no follow-up. Not a threat cue, not a range-tailed weapon search. It's a question tossed into black water. Where are you? Exactly, and who is forward of you? NATO's answer is silence from the hulls and calm words on the net. Mark the ping. Do not illuminate. Let the multi-static math do the talking. The playbook rolls without drama. P8s refresh the fields on the 40-minute drumbeat, stepping patterns so transmitters and listeners cross at angles the sub can't easily model. Destroyers don't chase. They sit in pouncer stations ahead of likely turns, strangling exit lanes with coverage instead of noise. A frigate pushes a hold-on message across the link. No change, stay cold, protect the geometry. It feels passive if you crave action. It is pressure if you value time. Decision lands as policy, not panic. No flood of active sonar. No hedgehog of torpedo presets spun up in tubes. NATO chooses certainty over volume, blocking clean egress with predictive coverage, mapping possible north and east breaks, and sealing the southern drifts with layered ears. The carrier never jinx. The ring never blinks. The clock stays on their side. The Russian boat bends first. It angles down, then takes a north-northeast turn within 18 minutes, trying to wash its trail in colder water and leave by the seam it rode in on. The Virginia-class slides with it, depth for depth, a quiet shadow that never closes to spook but never lets the line fade. Overhead, the P8s walk the grid north, passing grids like torches at relay handoff. No flares, no splash, just a retreat measured in degrees and minutes. Quiet victory lives here, forcing a choice without firing a shot, spending patience to buy control of time. You've watched the loop play through. Next time you hear GIUK, think angles, think layers, and think of a network that wins by seeing first. Control wins fights. Undersea, that means time and information. The side that sets the tempo forces choices. The side that loses track runs out of quiet. You felt how a sensor net, patient crews, and tight geometry boxed a steel serpent without a flare or a shot. That's power you can't see, only measure by what didn't happen. Now it's your call. If you want more breakdowns of the tactics that shape real power at sea, subscribe. Comment your choice below, go active early, or keep the net passive. The GIUK gap is a seam. Predict movement through it, and you own the Atlantic.